Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Alicia and the City. I'm Alicia. It's super duper nice to see you here, as always. As you guys know, Valentine's Day is approaching this weekend, and I thought it's a great time to share my favorite romantic movies of all time. And I don't know about you, I'm not a very big on Valentine's Day. I don't really like all that, heart shape and chocolates and all that. But I do love a good romantic movie, and I think it's, a perfect excuse to cuddle up with maybe a glass of wine or whatever drink you like and just watch a great romantic story. Also, the movies I would recommend, I think they are perfect whether you're going to be watching them alone, with your partner, with your friends. So let's not necessarily make it about Valentine's Day, let's just make it about great romantic stories. And the first movie I want to share with you, it's probably my all-time favorites, which is Pride and Prejudice, the one with Keira Knightley. And I also watched another version, which was, I think, by BBC Channel, which has two parts. And even though that story is uh, amazing, I also loved it as well. But I still prefer, I think it's John Wright, who is director of Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley. I think I just like the cinematography and the way how characters are portrayed in that movie. And I watched it so many times. I probably know it already by heart, but it's still one of my most favorite love stories of all time. And I think even if you watch it with a partner who's not necessarily in this kind of movies, I think just it's more than just a love story. I think it has a deep component to it, and I truly enjoy it every time I watch it. Next movie I want to share with you is You Got Mail. So Ian probably already knows this classical story, which was involving the characters of Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, and some might say that it's quite forward for its time because the characters, as you can guess from a name, met online through email. And it's quite interesting because I forgot the name of the characters, but basically Meg Ryan's character, she's a small bookshop owner, versus Tom Hanks' character, he's a corporate businessman who doesn't really care about small business. He's only caring about prosperity of his own corporation. So it's quite interesting that despite those huge differences in the mindset, those people connect about something else, something more meaningful, something deeper. And I think that's the beauty of this story, at least to me. I like how the story unfolds, and it's quite interesting that they don't really know that they actually know each other in real life, which is quite funny. So yeah, I think that would be a great romantic movie to watch or rewatch if you haven't seen it already. Another movie I want to mention is About Time, with Rachel McAdams, which came out, I want to say, like 2012, somewhere around there. I don't remember exactly, but I've rewatched that movie multiple times. I think it's a great dramatic story, even though there is a funny comedy parts to it. I think it's more on the drama side because besides the main storyline, which is focusing on two people in love, because main character can travel in time, I think it also relates a lot to different kind of love, love to your family members, especially there is a big storyline between him and his father, and him and his sister. And there's also a storyline which is sort of, zestful life and love in your life. So I think it's deeper than just like a cutesy romantic story. And I think the main lesson from the movie, no spoiler alerts, but I think that's worth mentioning, is that it's quite important to be in love with imperfections, and you don't have to get everything correctly and perfect and right. That's what makes life unique. That's what makes it yours, and that's what makes it beautiful. I think it's a beautiful story. I think it's very well executed, so definitely give it a try if you haven't seen it already. Another movie is on the lighter side. It's called Crazy Stupid Love, and basically there are quite several um, stories in it. Let's put it this way. And so the main character, he is a middle-aged man who is going through divorce. So he been married for, I don't know, probably like about 30 years to his wife, and then suddenly she wants to divorce, and he obviously heartbroken. He doesn't really know what to do. He hasn't been dating obviously ever since he got married, and he just doesn't really know what to do with himself. So he has to overcome those inner conflicts within himself. But then he meets a younger character who is played by Ryan Gosling, and he is very good with the ladies. He's sort of, you know, like a womanizer. He has a new girl every day. And he sort of mentors him on how to get back in the game. But then, you know, some things happen, and they actually, their stories kind of intersect. And it's a funny movie. It has a dramatic part to it, obviously, but I would say it's more of a comedy. It's not very, you know, like a deep philosophical movie or anything like that. It's just a movie, you know, something you would call popcorn movie, but I still enjoy it. I watched it several times. I think I like the characters. I like their stories, because I like that it's about, you know, young and crazy love, but it's also about um, love which was through a lot, which was through a lot of complications, and sort of that, you know, love revival component. So give it a try. I think it's a good movie. Let me just refer to my list here for a second. So okay, another movie I have for you is Definitely Maybe, which is with Ryan Reynolds, and basically his little daughter wants to know how he met her mom. So it's like, so sort of like How I Met Your Mother, but about one kid and in a movie format, which is actually quite cute. So definitely has a little bit of drama side to it, and normal dad would just explain how he met her mom, but he actually told her about several big romances he had throughout his life, you know, starting from I think high school or college, which was quite interesting. And then she actually guessed which woman was her mom. But the thing is that they're going through divorce, and little girl wants to know what caused it, and she actually kind of helps him to figure out things, which is very sweet. I think it's a very sweet story, with multiple love stories in it, and I think it's quite enjoyable. I personally like it. The next movie is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. So this is like a very classical early 2000s story with Kate Hudson and Matthew McConaughey. I rewatched it many times. I think that it's definitely a comedy, you know, very typical for early 2000s. A girl and a guy who live in New York. So he's a journalist. She's also a columnist for a female magazine, and but they don't know what both of them do for a living. I think something like that. And basically, she has an assignment to do all kinds of mistakes women do in relationship to lose a guy in 10 days. And for him, he has to prove to his boss that he is serious and he can be committed, and to find the girl and, you know, stay with her. So basically they are playing each other without knowing that, and that's what makes the story interesting. And it's kind of interesting how they drive each other crazy. And of course, I think girl's name is Alex. So obviously she goes above and beyond to drive him nuts and do like all kinds of things. Obviously it's very over exaggerating, but um, I think it's a funny movie. I think that it kind of proves that when you love someone, you love them with all their quirks and weirdness. And great movie. All right, the next movie would be Kate and Leopold. It's another great movie with Meg Ryan, and Leopold is played by Hugh Jackman. So, you know, two very classical actors. I like them both. It's a great story from from the 90s, and it's also based in New York City. So basically, Leopold is a guy from, I think it's the beginning of 20th century, uh, back when Brooklyn Bridge was built, and basically he jumps into the river and he finds himself in the 90s, and he meets Kate, who is, you know, a working woman, getting stuff done, you know, like a typical 90s movies. And interesting part is that she doesn't really believe him that he's from the past. I mean, granted, but it's quite interesting to see because, you know, she's a feminist. She doesn't really believe in lovey-dovey stuff. She doesn't really want to date anyone. And then suddenly Leopold, you know, shows his manners, shows how you know, a real man can treat a woman. And it's a funny story. Definitely it has a little bit of element of fantasy to it, but I think it's a beautiful love story. I personally enjoy it very much, and I think it makes a great story. Next movie will be obviously Breakfast at Tiffany's. I couldn't just pass on it. I think it's also is one of my favorite movies. I love Audrey Hepburn. I love Audrey Hepburn in Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's very iconic, you know, Holly Golightly character has inspired lots of fashion trends and stories overall, I think. Um, it's quite interesting because in the book, they don't end up together because, you know, the character of Guy is actually gay, but I think there is certain, you know, sweetness to it. Um, I think it's a great love story, at least the way how it's portrayed in the movie, because they start out from friendship, and again, I forgot the name of a guy. I think it's Frank. He takes Holly again with all her weirdness and quirkiness, and she's not perfect, and she doesn't pretend to be, but it's interesting to see how their love story develops, and it's just a great movie from the 50s. Speaking of movies from the 50s, I love Marilyn Monroe's Some Like It Hot, and it's quite interesting because you know, the movie is in black and white, and I watched it for the first time when I was a kid, and I was very impressed. And then after I rewatched it as a teenager and now in my adulthood, obviously it shows its time, but it's still a lovely story. Um, it's quite funny, about a girl, actually about two guys who get into a girls' jazz band to escape from mafia, and they have to pretend to be women. I think there were so many movies who tried to sort of mimic the storyline of this one, but you know, you cannot beat Marilyn Monroe and her charm and her bend her eyelashes. I think it's quite interesting movie. If you have never seen it, please do so, because I think Marilyn is quite spectacular in it. The next movie will be Leap Year. So, Leap Year is a story about American woman who is dating a doctor, and she expects him to propose, but something tells her that he wouldn't. So she decides to take matter in her own hands, because there is an Irish tradition that every February 29th, which as we all know, happens on leap year. Women have to propose to their boyfriends, and I think they have to say yes or something like that. And so she buys a ring and she travels to Ireland, and then she gets stuck in a small village. And she meets a guy who kind of helps her to get to Dublin. And obviously, there are a few things happening on their trips, and they have some misunderstandings, but they develop feelings for each other. And I think it's a very interesting story from different perspective of view. Obviously, again, it's sort of dramatized, and it has lots of stereotypes about Irish people, but I do love Irish landscapes. I think they did a great job capturing that, and also I think quite interesting to get to know Irish culture. And also, their love story is not very typical, even though, like, how it's gonna end, I guess. It's quite predictable, but I feel like the story is interesting because it's sort of it started from a hatred, and I kind of like when relationships start from hate to love. So definitely give it a try. Another movie I have on my list is The Wow. So it's actually based on a true story, even though it's not like very accurate. It's very romanticized. But basically, it's a story about a couple, husband and wife, who get into car accident, and a woman loses her memory, and basically she remembers the last memory she has of herself is her being in college and dating this guy, and on her way to becoming a lawyer. But when she met her actual husband, things change, and she figure out that she doesn't want to be a lawyer anymore, and she actually become a sculpture artist. And it's actually quite heartbreaking story, because obviously her husband, he tries to do everything to make her comfortable, but for her, he's a stranger, she never met him before. So he tries to win her back, and he tries to remember to remind her of things they did together, and he actually even tries to recreate their first date to make her fall in love with him again. But it seems like nothing is working, and it's quite heartbreaking to see that you know, we are made of our memories, after all. But also, it's quite interesting to see that even though even if you lose your memory, some things, if they are meant to happen, they meant to happen anyway. um, so yeah, it's a drama story, quite sweet, and it's the main characters are played by Rachel McAdams and Channing Tatum, which I think was a great casting. I think they have a chemistry on the screen, a great romantic story. The next movie is Sense and Sensibility, which is sort of it was in the same topic as Pride and Prejudice. I love Sense and Sensibility because it's about two women. It's a story by Jane Austen about two sisters, and clearly one of the sisters, she's sort of cold-minded, but in a good way. Um, she takes full responsibility for her decisions, and maybe she's not as affectionate as her sister, but she has reasons for that. So she's sort of like, she's a grown-up one. And then she has her sister, who's very affectionate, very passionate, and she follows her heart but doesn't really use her brains, if that makes sense. So it's, sort of um, like polar opposites, which of course never would happen in real life. But it's a great story, and also it's interesting how both women pursue their romantic relationships, and I truly enjoyed it. So while both sisters are played, one sister is played by Emma Thompson, and another sister is played by Kate Winslet. And I love both actresses. I think they are great, and it's just a great movie. And the last movie I have for today is An Ideal Husband, which is based on my favorite play by Oscar Wilde, which is called An Ideal Husband. And basically, it's a story about, I don't even know how to put it, about an ideal husband. Well, basically, it's a story about trust in a couple, and how, business and affairs, like business affairs, can sort of ruin the relationships. And also there's like lots of diplomatic intrigues going on, and there are also multiple storylines and multiple love stories, which makes this play very interesting. And the movie is, I think it's 2001, and it has some great actors. So it has Julianne Moore, it has Kate Blanchett, at least from who I can remember. But it's actually, it's quite interesting because I have a book on my shelf, and if you would follow the dialogues, they were portrayed pretty much word to word in the movie, which I really, really appreciate. And they followed the setting of the play, so they actually followed what Oscar Wilde put in his book, of course, making it a little bit more, movie. I don't know what's the word, but put it into a movie. So I really love the story. I love Oscar Wilde, and I'm very, very happy that the movie kept its charm and they followed Oscar Wilde's legacy. So those were my favorite romantic movies, and I hope that you guys enjoyed. Sorry if this video was a little bit too long. Let me know in comments down below what movies, what romantic movies are your favorite. Don't forget to give me a big thumbs up, and I will see you in my next videos. Bye bye.